My sister chose to betray me for my boyfriend. Years later she returned pregnant and broken. But I gave her the answer she deserved. I never thought the person who would hurt me the most would be the one I had protected for 30 years of my life. But here I am, sitting in my apartment at 2 in the morning, staring at text messages that just shattered everything I believed about family, love, and trust. My name is Olivia Morgan. I'm 30 years old, and until 3 days ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I work as a strategic manager at Wellington Financial, a job that pays well enough for me to afford a decent apartment in downtown and still help out my family when needed. I've been with Marcus for 2 years. Tall, charming Marcus with his easy smile and weekend plans that always seem to revolve around work meetings and guy nights out. And then there's Vanessa, my baby sister, 4 years younger and the person I've been looking out for since she was 6 years old. Vanessa has always been the free spirit of our family. While I was busy climbing the corporate ladder, she bounced between freelance marketing gigs, never quite settling into anything permanent. Our parents, both teachers nearing retirement, worried about her constantly. "At least she has you to guide her," Mom would always say, and I took that responsibility seriously. I helped Vanessa with rent when she was short, gave her career advice, even let her crash at my place during her figuring things out phases. The three of us, Marcus, Vanessa, and I, hung out together regularly. Movie nights, family dinners, weekend brunches. Marcus always joked that he was dating both Morgan sisters because Vanessa was around so much. I thought it was sweet how well they got along. I thought I was lucky to have a boyfriend who cared about my family. I should have paid attention to the signs. Marcus started working late more often, his phone constantly buzzing with notifications he'd quickly dismiss with just work stuff. When I'd ask about his day, his answers became vague, distracted. "Busy meetings," he'd say, not meeting my eyes. "Client calls." And Vanessa started declining my calls more frequently, claiming she was super busy with new projects, though she never seemed to have any concrete details about what these projects actually were. The night everything changed started like any other. Marcus was supposed to come over for dinner, but he canceled last minute with another work emergency. I was annoyed but not suspicious, until I realized he'd left his laptop charger at my place. Being the considerate girlfriend, I decided to surprise him at his apartment with the charger and maybe some takeout from his favorite Thai place. I used my key to let myself in, calling out his name as I walked through the dark hallway. The living room was empty, but I could hear voices coming from the bedroom. Marcus's voice, and a woman's laughter that made my stomach drop because it sounded so familiar. I crept closer, my heart hammering against my ribs, and heard Marcus say something that made the woman giggle in response. That giggle, I knew that giggle better than my own. I stood frozen outside his bedroom door for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, listening to my boyfriend and my sister having the kind of intimate conversation I thought Marcus and I shared. They were talking about their day, about inside jokes I didn't understand, about plans for next weekend that apparently didn't include me. My hands were shaking as I backed away from the door, letting myself out as quietly as I'd entered. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the building, trying to convince myself I'd misheard. That there was some explanation that didn't involve the two people I trusted most in the world betraying me in the most intimate way possible. But when I got home and really looked at Marcus's phone, he'd forgotten it in his rush to leave, I found months of text messages between him and someone saved as 5 with a heart emoji. Messages that started innocent enough but quickly became flirtatious, then romantic, then explicit. Messages talking about how they had to be careful around me, how guilty they felt but couldn't stop themselves, how maybe it would be better if I found out naturally so they wouldn't have to keep pretending. The most recent message, sent just 2 hours earlier, was from Vanessa. "She's getting suspicious about you working late. Maybe we should cool it for a while?" Marcus had responded, "I can't cool it. I'm falling in love with you. 5th real love. Not the comfortable thing I have with Liv." Comfortable. 2 years of my life reduced to comfortable. I spent the rest of that night reading every message, looking at every photo they'd sent each other, including ones taken in my apartment when I was at work. They'd been together for 4 months. 4 months of family dinners where they sat across from each other, making small talk while planning their next secret meeting. 4 months of Vanessa hugging me goodbye while she was sleeping with my boyfriend. 4 months of Marcus kissing me goodnight after spending his afternoon in bed with my sister. The next morning, I called in sick to work and waited for Marcus to come looking for his phone. He showed up around noon, apologetic and charming, full of explanations about his crazy work schedule. I watched him lie to my face for 10 minutes before I slid his phone across my coffee table. "You left this," I said simply. The color drained from his face as he realized what that meant. "Liv, I can explain, don't." My voice was steadier than I felt. "Just don't." I read everything. He tried to give me the speech about how it just happened, how he never meant for it to go this far, how he cared about me but couldn't help his feelings for Vanessa. I let him talk until he ran out of words, then I asked him the only question that mattered: "Do you love her?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he decided to stop lying. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." I nodded and stood up. "Then you should go be with her." After Marcus left, I called Vanessa. She answered on the first ring, probably expecting it to be him. "Liv, hey, what's up?" "I know," I said simply. The silence stretched between us for nearly a minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, smaller but also defiant. "How much do you know?" "Everything. The messages, the photos, the 4 months of lying to my face." I was surprised by how calm I sounded. "I know everything, Vanessa. I never meant for it to happen," she said. But there was no real apology in her voice. "It just did. You can't control who you fall in love with. You could control whether you acted on it," I replied. "You could have told me. You could have stayed away from my boyfriend. You could have done literally anything except what you did. Liv, please try to understand. What I understand is that my sister has been sleeping with my boyfriend in my apartment while I was at work, and both of you have been lying to me for months." My calm was starting to crack. "What I understand is that every family dinner, every movie night, every time you hugged me and told me you loved me, you were betraying me." "It's not like that," Vanessa said, and now she sounded angry. "You don't understand what Marcus and I have. It's real, Liv. It's not just some fling. We're in love. In love." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're in love with my boyfriend of 2 years, and you think that makes it better?" "He was never really yours," she said, and those words hit me like a physical blow. "If he was, this wouldn't have happened. People don't cheat when they're truly happy." I hung up on her. I actually hung up on my own sister. Something I'd never done in 30 years of life. But I couldn't listen to her blame me for their betrayal. Couldn't hear her justify 4 months of deception by claiming Marcus was never really mine to begin with. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work, sleep, and carefully avoiding places where I might run into either Marcus or Vanessa. I threw myself into a major project at Wellington Financial, staying late and arriving early, grateful for the distraction. I told my parents the basics: that Marcus and I had broken up, that Vanessa and I were having a disagreement, that I needed space. Mom tried to get more details, but I held firm. "Sometimes relationships just run their course," I said, and left it at that. 2 weeks after that horrible night, I saw Marcus and Vanessa together at the farmer's market downtown. They were holding hands, laughing at something on Vanessa's phone, looking exactly like what they were, a new couple in the honeymoon phase. Marcus had his arm around her waist in a way that was both possessive and tender, and Vanessa was leaning into him like they'd been together for years instead of months. They looked happy. That was the part that hurt most. Not just that they were together, but that they were genuinely, obviously happy together in a way that made their betrayal feel almost justified. Almost like maybe Marcus had been right when he said what we had was just comfortable, because what they had looked like passion, like the kind of love people write songs about. They didn't see me watching from across the street, and I was grateful for that. I didn't want to have the awkward conversation, didn't want to pretend to be okay with their relationship, didn't want to hear Vanessa try to explain again why this was somehow not as bad as it seemed. Instead, I went home and blocked both of them on social media. I was tired of accidentally seeing glimpses of their life together, tired of mutual friends posting photos that included them, tired of being reminded that they'd moved on while I was still trying to figure out how to trust anyone again. A month passed. Then, too, I started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinner and movies with men I met through work or friends. It felt strange at first, explaining that I was single after 2 years of introducing myself as half of a couple, but gradually it became normal. I was remembering what it felt like to be just Olivia, not Olivia and Marcus, or Olivia Vanessa's sister. I got promoted to Senior Strategic Manager in March, a promotion I'd been working toward for over a year. My team threw me a small party, and I realized as I looked around the conference room at people who'd supported my work and celebrated my success, that I had more friends than I'd given myself credit for. I'd been so focused on Marcus and Vanessa that I'd forgotten about the other relationships in my life. The ones built on mutual respect and shared interests rather than obligation or history. Spring turned into summer, and I started feeling like myself again. I took a pottery class, joined a hiking group, read books I'd been meaning to get to for years. I traveled to Portland for a long weekend with my college roommate Sarah, who listened to the whole story over wine and immediately declared both Marcus and Vanessa dead to her, which made me laugh for the first time in months. "You're better off without them," Sarah said as we walked through Powell's books. I never liked him anyway. Too smooth, you know? Like he was always performing instead of just being himself. "You never told me that," I pointed out. "Because you seemed happy, and I figured I was wrong. But now I think my instincts were right. He was never good enough for you, Liv." It was nice to hear, even if I suspected Sarah was just being loyal. But maybe that was what I needed. People who were automatically on my side, who didn't require detailed explanations or justifications for their support. I was finally feeling stable, maybe even happy, when Vanessa showed up at Mom's birthday party in August. I'd been dreading the party for weeks, knowing there was a chance she'd be there but hoping our parents had respected my request for space. When I walked into my childhood home and saw her sitting at the kitchen table, very obviously pregnant, my first instinct was to turn around and leave. But this was Mom's 70th birthday, and I wasn't going to let Vanessa's presence ruin it. So I took a deep breath, fixed a smile on my face, and walked into the kitchen like seeing my pregnant sister for the first time in 6 months was perfectly normal. "Olivia!" Mom's face lit up as she saw me. "Look who decided to surprise us!" Vanessa looked up from her seat at the table, and I was shocked by how different she looked. She'd always been thin, but now she was obviously pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 months along, and looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing one of those shapeless maternity dresses that suggested she'd grabbed whatever was clean rather than choosing something she actually liked. "Hi, Liv," she said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Vanessa." I kept my voice neutral, pleasant. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," she admitted. "But good. The baby's healthy, everything's going well." I noticed she didn't mention Marcus, and neither did my parents during the awkward small talk that followed. Dad asked about her living situation, and she gave vague answers about figuring things out. Mom asked about work and got similarly evasive responses. By the time we sat down to dinner, it was clear that whatever fairy tale romance Vanessa and Marcus had been living had encountered some serious problems. The birthday dinner was tense in the way family gatherings get when everyone's trying to pretend everything is normal while obviously it's not. Mom kept glancing between Vanessa and me like she was waiting for one of us to explain what was happening. Dad focused on his food and asked safe questions about work and weather. Vanessa barely ate, pushing food around her plate and checking her phone constantly. After we sang happy birthday and ate cake, I was getting ready to leave when Vanessa cornered me in the hallway. "Liv, can we talk, please?" I looked at her for a long moment. She was obviously struggling, obviously unhappy, and 6 months ago I would have immediately asked what was wrong and how I could help. But 6 months ago she hadn't been sleeping with my boyfriend. "What do you want to talk about, Vanessa?" "I know you hate me," she started, and I held up a hand to stop her. "I don't hate you. I don't feel anything about you." That wasn't entirely true, but it was closer to the truth than love or hate. What I felt was a kind of hollow indifference, like she was someone I used to know rather than someone I'd shared a childhood with. "I made a mistake," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "A huge mistake, and I lost everything. I lost Marcus, I lost my apartment, I lost my job, and I lost you." "You didn't lose me," I corrected her. "You chose Marcus over me. There's a difference." "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Vanessa. You had a choice between being honest with me and sneaking around with my boyfriend, and you chose to sneak around. You had a choice between my feelings and his, and you chose his. You made your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences." She was crying openly now, which would have broken my heart 6 months ago. Now I just felt tired. "He left me," she whispered. "As soon as I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready to be a father, that we'd moved too fast, that he needed space. He moved out and stopped returning my calls, and now I don't even know where he's living." Marcus had abandoned her. Part of me, a small petty part I wasn't proud of, felt satisfied by that news. He'd thrown away 2 years with me for 4 months with her, and now he'd thrown away those 4 months too. But looking at my sister, obviously struggling and alone, I mostly just felt sorry for her. "I'm sorry he did that to you," I said, and meant it. That was wrong of him. "I don't have anywhere to go," she continued. "I can't afford my rent without his help, and I can't work as much because of the pregnancy complications, and Mom and Dad." She trailed off, but I could fill in the blanks. Our parents were disappointed in her, probably confused about why her relationship with Marcus had ended so abruptly, definitely not equipped to support a single mother at their age. "What do you want from me, Vanessa?" "I want my sister back," she said simply. "I know I don't deserve it, I know I messed up everything, but I need you. I've always needed you, and I was stupid to think I could have Marcus and keep you too." There it was. The apology I'd been waiting for, the acknowledgement that she'd made the wrong choice. 6 months ago, it might have been enough. But now, looking at her desperate face, all I could think was that she wasn't sorry for betraying me. She was sorry it hadn't worked out the way she'd planned. "You didn't think you could have Marcus and keep me," I said slowly. "You thought you could have Marcus and I'd eventually forgive you. You thought our relationship was so solid, so unconditional, that you could damage it and it would heal itself." "Maybe," she admitted. I thought you'd understand eventually, that you'd see how much we loved each other and forgive us. And now that he's gone, you want me to help you pick up the pieces." She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Her presence at Mom's birthday party, her tears, her plea for understanding, it all added up to the same thing. She wanted me to rescue her, the way I always had, the way I'd been doing since she was 6 years old. "I can't do that, Vanessa. Please live. I know I hurt you, but I'm family. We're sisters." "We were sisters," I corrected her. "But sisters don't sleep with each other's boyfriends. Sisters don't lie for months and then blame each other when the truth comes out. Sisters don't disappear when things get good, and only come back when they need help." "I was wrong," she said desperately. "I know I was wrong. But I'm pregnant and alone and I don't know what to do." I looked at her for a long moment. This person who'd been the most important relationship in my life for 30 years. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike, helping her with homework, letting her sleep in my bed when she had nightmares. I remembered every birthday party, every Christmas morning, every family vacation where it was Olivia and Vanessa against the world. And I remembered 4 months of betrayal, 4 months of lies, 4 months of watching her sit across from me at family dinners while she was sleeping with my boyfriend. "You're going to figure it out," I said finally. "You're going to find a job that works with your pregnancy. You're going to find a place to live. You're going to prepare to be a mother. You're going to do all of that because you're strong and capable and you don't actually need me to rescue you." "But I do need you," she whispered. "No, you don't. You want me to make this easier for you, but that's not my job anymore. My job is to take care of myself, to build relationships with people who value me, to trust people who've earned it." I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. "I hope everything works out for you, Vanessa. I really do, but it's going to work out without me." I left her standing in the hallway and said goodbye to my parents, who were obviously confused by the tension but didn't ask questions. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Not satisfaction at seeing Vanessa struggle, but relief that I'd held my boundaries, that I hadn't let guilt or family obligation override my own needs. 3 months later, I heard through Mom that Vanessa had moved back in with our parents temporarily, that she'd found part-time work doing social media for a local business, that she was preparing for the baby's arrival in January. I was glad she was getting back on her feet, but I didn't reach out. I sent a baby gift through Mom when my nephew was born, a beautiful handmade blanket and some practical items, but I didn't visit, didn't call, didn't ask to be involved. Instead, I focused on my own life. I'd started dating David, a lawyer I'd met through work who was thoughtful and honest and made me laugh. He knew the basics of what had happened with Marcus and Vanessa, but he didn't press for details, didn't try to fix my family relationships, didn't suggest that forgiveness was always the right choice. "Some people earn their way back into your life," he said one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment. "Others just expect to be let back in because of history or obligation. You get to decide which category someone falls into." "My parents think I'm being too hard on her," I admitted. "They keep hinting that I should visit, That the baby changes things, that family is family. Do you think the baby changes things? I considered that. Did becoming a mother somehow erase Vanessa's betrayal? Did my nephew's existence obligate me to rebuild a relationship with his mother? I think the baby is innocent in all of this, I said finally. And if Vanessa becomes the kind of person who deserves to be in my life again, maybe someday I'll have a relationship with both of them. But becoming a mother doesn't automatically make someone trustworthy. David nodded. Sounds like you know what you're doing. Maybe I did. For the first time in my adult life, I was making decisions based on what I wanted rather than what other people needed from me. I was choosing relationships that added to my life rather than drained from it. I was learning to trust my own judgment about people, even when that judgment went against family loyalty or social expectations. 6 months after my nephew was born, I got another promotion at work, this time to director level, with a significant salary increase and my own team to manage. I celebrated with David and my friends from work and Sarah, who flew in from Portland just for the occasion. We went to an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind of place I used to save for special occasions with Marcus, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd thought about him. You look different, Sarah observed as we shared dessert. Happier, more settled. I feel different, I admitted, like I'm finally living my own life instead of the life I thought I was supposed to want. What changed? I thought about that question for a while. What had changed wasn't losing Marcus or even losing Vanessa, though both of those losses had been necessary. What had changed was realizing that I deserved people who chose me back, who valued my trust enough not to betray it, who saw my happiness as important as their own. I learned the difference between loving someone and enabling them, I said finally. And I learned that walking away from people who hurt you isn't giving up on them. It's refusing to give up on yourself. That night, as David and I walked back to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year. Complete contentment with my life as it was. I wasn't waiting for anyone to apologize, wasn't hoping for relationships to heal themselves, wasn't making myself smaller so other people would feel comfortable. I was just living, fully and honestly, surrounded by people who had earned their place in my life. I love you, David said as we stopped in front of my building, and I realized he was right to wait until now to say it. 6 months ago I wouldn't have been ready to hear it, let alone say it back. I'd been too busy grieving what I'd lost to appreciate what I was gaining. I love you too, I said, and meant it completely. As we walked up to my apartment, I thought about Vanessa and Marcus, probably dealing with their own consequences somewhere in the city. I hoped they were both learning the lessons they needed to learn, hoped they were becoming better people because of the pain they'd caused and experienced. But I no longer felt responsible for their growth or their happiness. I'd learned that some relationships are worth fighting for, and others are worth walking away from. I'd learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is losing yourself completely. I'd learned that the people who truly love you won't ask you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the biggest act of love is knowing when to stop loving someone. Not because you don't care, but because caring without boundaries isn't actually love at all. It's just another way of disappearing. And I was done disappearing for anyone. 2 years later, David and I got engaged on a quiet Tuesday evening in my apartment. No dramatic proposal or restaurant fanfare. Just a conversation about wanting to build a life together and his grandmother's ring appearing in a small velvet box. As I looked at the ring on my finger, I thought about all the ways my life had changed since that awful night I'd discovered Marcus's texts. I'd lost a sister and a boyfriend, but I'd gained a sense of my own worth. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to value honesty over convenience, to choose people who chose me back. I'd built a career I was proud of, friendships that sustained me, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than habit or desperation. When I called my parents to tell them about the engagement, Dad answered the phone. His voice was warm and excited, and I could hear him smiling through the phone. "David's a good man," he said after I shared the news. "He makes you happy." "He does," I agreed. "Your mother's going to want to help plan everything," he warned. "She's been saving wedding ideas in a folder for years." I laughed, imagining Mom's excitement, her tendency to turn any celebration into an elaborate production. "I'll call her tomorrow and we can start planning." There was a pause, and then Dad said quietly, "Will Vanessa be invited?" I'd been expecting this question, had been thinking about it since David first brought up marriage. The honest answer was that I didn't know. Not because I was undecided, but because I hadn't figured out how to navigate family events with someone I was willing to be civil to, but not close to. "I'm not sure, Dad. We'll figure it out. Whatever you decide is fine with us," he said, and I knew he meant it. "We just want you to be happy." As I planned my wedding and thought about the guest list, I realized that Vanessa's presence or absence wasn't the most important thing. What mattered was that I was marrying someone who had chosen me every day for 2 years, someone who had never made me question his commitment or wonder if I was enough. What mattered was that I was surrounded by people who celebrated my happiness instead of undermining it, who supported my choices instead of questioning them, who had earned their place in my life through consistency and respect. I didn't know what the future held for my relationship with Vanessa. Maybe someday we'd find a way to be sisters again. Different sisters than we'd been before, but sisters nonetheless. Maybe we'd remain politely distant relatives who sent birthday cards and asked about each other through our parents. What I knew was that whatever happened would be my choice, made from a place of strength rather than obligation, based on who Vanessa proved herself to be going forward rather than who she'd been in the past. I'd learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, that loving someone doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior, that family bonds don't override personal boundaries. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and give someone the space to grow into the person they're capable of being. I'd learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is losing yourself completely. And most of all, I'd learned that happiness isn't something you wait for other people to give you. It's something you build, deliberately and carefully, with people who value what you're building as much as you do. As I drifted off to sleep in David's arms the night we got engaged, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, so desperate to hold on to relationships that I was willing to accept betrayal rather than face loneliness. That woman felt like a stranger to me now, someone I remembered fondly but could never go back to being. This version of myself was harder maybe, but also stronger, more discerning about who got access to my trust, more protective of my own happiness, more willing to be alone than to be with people who diminished me. I'd learned the difference between being loved and being needed, between being appreciated and being taken for granted, between being family and being convenient, and I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is living well, choosing better, and refusing to let other people's poor choices define your story. I was finally living my own story, surrounded by people who'd earned their place in it, and that felt like the most beautiful revenge of all.